And we're going.
Hey, good morning, everybody, and welcome. I'm really excited to see so many people this morning, and happy St. Patty's Day. Welcome to our Youth Protection Procedures training. We're really excited to offer this morning. We've had several questions about how to get your volunteers certified and keep that process going in the most efficient way possible in your offices. So we're like, okay, well, let's pick out some people to do this training for us. And we identified the best people possible. We found Mickey Mertz in our state 4-H office, and she is going to tell you from the state office perspective what all needs to be done. Then we have Carrie Pressler and Carla Mickle from Morton County, and they have done a fantastic process in their county to get things going. And Carrie is our administrative support in that county. She's going to tell you how to be efficient and make sure you keep up with things and the process that she uses in their county, and kind of share with you what she does on how to make sure she keeps everybody certified and going and up to date. So I'm going to turn it over to these fantastic ladies this morning, Mickey, Carrie, and Carla. Thank you.
Okay, hello everyone. I'm Mickey Mertz. I'm the administrative coordinator in the state office, and I'm just going to offer sort of a brief overview of the policy itself, why we have it, and then where some of our resources are located on the state website. So as many of you probably know, the youth protection policy is something we use to screen our adult volunteers. The main purpose of it is to make sure that we are screening and checking up on anybody who's going to have a prolonged interaction with the youth of 4-H. So technically this would not apply to somebody who was maybe coming in for like one club meeting to do a presentation on something along those lines. But it's anybody who would have repeated experience or interaction with the youth, chaperones, leaders, somebody who's doing long-term workshops or camps, things like that. These would be the people you would need to be screening. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Let's see here. Maybe I'm going to share my screen. There we go. Okay. So does everyone see our front page of our website, hopefully? Okay, so when you come to the website, you'll land on this page first, and the place you'll go to get to our YPP information is going to be under staff. And then the very last one down here, youth protection. Got my little outline here. And we will be sharing all documents we share with you today, my outline, there's a PowerPoint coming up, all of that will be shared with everybody after as well. So when you land on this page, scrolling down here at the bottom, this is the layout of how we have our youth protection policy organized. The first tab here will have the policy itself in its entirety if you want to read through that. We have a check sheet. This is Form Q. This helps you kind of keep track of the things you need to do for different situations. So I'll show you here. I don't know if it's going to open readily for you folks. Can you see the PDF on that page? Okay, so here it shows you the different scenarios in which you would do a screening. So the first one here, we have prospective volunteers who will work directly with youth. This would be a new volunteer, essentially. Somebody that has not been screened in the past is new to the program. So then it has a list. You go through the letters. Staff member submits the potential name for clearance through the NDSF or the SFN 433. All of these things. So this tells you exactly what you need to do at the county level to get things approved for your volunteer to participate. The next one over here is current volunteer rescreening. So these would be people who have been screened in the past and are either needing to be reactivated or are past their 6 years. So all of our volunteers need to be screened every 6 years. And there are a few less items that they have to go through. For example, they don't have to do the same letters out to people to get references like you would for a brand new screen. But you do have to resubmit their SFN 433. So there are a couple of steps you would still need to do. And then further down, There is one here for applicant previously selected by another organization. We don't use this one as often, but it is an option. This would be someone who, for example, has been screened by another organization that we would consider does a good enough job to screen their volunteers. So a teacher or somebody that maybe works with like childcare, you know, they've been screened pretty heavily. We do have the option as a sort of reciprocity with that organization. The only caveat with this is that we as an organization are not allowed to request that information ourselves. It has to come from the volunteer themselves. So there is a form in here, and I'll show you that later, that the volunteer can fill out and submit to that organization saying, I'm releasing my screening information to go to the 4-H office so that you can share that information with them. And then further down here, we have teens, teen employees. If they're under 18, that's a little bit different. Prospective paid staff. So there is a link here on the website that kind of discusses how we would screen somebody who is a paid employee. And then current paid staff rescreening. So again, this is somebody who's already an employed staff, has already been screened once, and they're just getting rescreened probably after that 6-year mark. This is an application log. This is a very simple template. Carrie will have something a little more tailor-made to what counties might be more interested in, but this is just a general one we supplied at one point that would help you keep track of all those steps that are part of the screening process. So their name, you know, if you've received their application, if their references have been checked, the forms, the clearances, what's been done, what hasn't. So you can kind of keep track because there are quite a few steps. And at times there can be quite a few names. And so we kind of provided, like I said, a very general checklist here. And I do want to mention right now, because I know it will come up as I go, there are some old logos on these forms. I know we've sent it out in the newsletter before, but the AgCom office does charge us $30 just to swap out a logo. And so our past policy has always been, as we update our forms and update our publications, the curriculum, that's when we get the logo change, because then we can get it as part of the fee of changing everything else. Whereas we haven't been really keen in the past to start submitting each page for a $30 upgrade. So just if you see an old logo, that's why. The form is still good though, it still serves its purpose. And then there is a youth protection training presentation. This is a PowerPoint that if you were to do a youth protection training for your volunteers in your county, you could use this. So it kind of goes over the policy, its purpose, the steps, and then there's even like a thing at the end, the sort of question answer thing, like asking the volunteers, you know, based on this information we've shared, how would you approach these situations, and that sort of a thing. So it's a nice little tool that you can use if you do a training for your volunteers in your county. So those are the items under the policy tab. The next tab is recognizing child abuse. And I think this one maybe be a good point to kind of point out. So underneath the policy, and like I showed you, we have that checklist that tells you the things that you have to do. Something we are going to consider, or I shouldn't say consider, something we are in the process of adding are additional items to have our volunteers do that are listed as mandatory instead of maybe kind of optional. There's a form, and it's on the volunteer screening page. This is where we have all of our forms that are in the checklist, sample letters, templates, those sorts of things. One of them we have here is called the Adult Behavioral Expectations. It's Form A. This is one they would have to sign every 6 years. It's just a thing saying, I still agree to behave appropriately. What we are going to add to that form on the back is a list of 4 boxes, and it's going to say, I as the volunteer have looked at this PowerPoint, and the PowerPoints we're going to list are the Recognizing Child Abuse PowerPoint, the Ensuring Safe Environments PowerPoint, the Anti-Bullying PowerPoint, and the Chaperone Orientation PowerPoint. We understand that maybe not every volunteer will be a chaperone, but it doesn't hurt for them to have that information. And by signing this form every 6 years, it tells us that they're refreshing their knowledge on these different areas because they are all important. But because it's a policy and a form change, we do have to get the proper people to sign off and look at it. So it's not updated yet, but that is coming down the line.
Nikki?
Yes.
One one thing too is that, we realize that in 4-H Online, as a 4-H leader or a volunteer or any, adult role, as they sign up through 4-H Online, we understand that they check off adult behavioral expectations, but it doesn't hurt every 6 years for them to actually see the piece of paper and have it in their hands so that they know, because we know, and all of us can agree, that there are times when you're going through 4-H Online, you're not reading everything that you're probably supposed to. So to have the hard copy in front of you and actually go through that is really important every 6 years, at least every 6 years.
Right. I think that's a wonderful point. It would never hurt to kind of refresh them and have that on hand. But yeah, so instead of putting all of that information on the form itself, it would just be, kind of, we're on our system here. It would be a checkbox and an initial saying, yes, I looked at this PowerPoint initial. Yes, I looked at this PowerPoint initial. So we're adding those 4 to the back of the adult behavioral expectations sheet that's coming in the process. And it will include the next 4 pages I show you. There's a PowerPoint on each, and those are the PowerPoints we're referring to. So the first one's recognizing child abuse. There is a recognizing child abuse PowerPoint, notes for the PowerPoint, and then there is an official report that you would submit if you suspect there is child abuse or neglect. This does link directly to the site in Bismarck, so this gets updated regularly. In fact, I checked it this morning just to make sure because it's still dated June of 2015, and I thought that's got to be an outdated form. And then I went to the website. Nope, it's not an outdated form. They just haven't had a need to update it, I guess, recently. So this is the current form, but we do have it linked directly to the site because it's just easier, if it does get updated, that it happens on our side as well, so we don't have to go in and check as often. But this would be the form you would fill out. Let's see, my computer is being kind of slow right now. There we go. So again, there's a PowerPoint and there are notes for the PowerPoint. And if you wanted to include this as part of a training for your volunteers, you would be absolutely free to do that. And you could have them all check those boxes right then and there, but they are also available online if the volunteers want to watch on their own time as well. Ensuring safe environments. This is one of the first ones that really grabbed our attention. This is something we wanted to make sure all of our specialists, I'm sorry, not our specialists, all of our volunteers saw. So this is the same thing. There's a PowerPoint, there are notes. There's actually a handout on this page as well if you wanted to share that with your volunteers. And then an incident report. This is a university report that you would fill out if something were to happen, an injury, an accident, things of that nature. Unfortunately, I'm sure Carla's had some experience with that, I know, once or twice. So the cost of doing the fun, super rigorous activities, right, Carla? And then we have the anti-bullying, same thing. There's a smaller policy, sort of breaks down the information on that. There's actually some activities here. This might be something really good for a club that's having some issue with bullying. This could be a good place to find information for that, a good resource. And then there's a PowerPoint and then a review for that PowerPoint at the bottom. And chaperone orientation. This is, like I said, geared more toward somebody who's going to be taking on a chaperone role, but there's still good information in there, even for just a volunteer that isn't doing a chaperone role. And then a handout with that as well. So those are the 4 areas we're going to be adding to the back of the adult behavioral expectations form. Then down here is the volunteer screening. I did touch on this page once already, but it pretty much has all of the resources that are referenced in the policy and the checklist. And so when it references Form B, Form A, Form G, they're talking about the items on this page. There are templates here. There are, so we have like reference check for phone or face-to-face, one for the mail, confidentiality statements, sample interview reports, sample letters. This one, I know Carrie has done a lot of really good tailoring on for her county, and she'll be sharing that later, but you don't have to take all of this word for word. It's just a way to get you started so you have a place you can assign it to your county, make it work for your different programs, that sort of a thing. And then something else that's listed down here in the letters, which I should mention as part of the process, is on top of sending something to Bismarck, that's the FSFN 433. This checks any, trying to think of the best word to describe it, I guess, reports of child abuse. So what that check is, and I I realized recently this might not be widely known, is it doesn't just check for people who have been convicted or charged even with cases of child abuse. It's anybody that's had a report. So that could be an unfounded report. It could be just anything that's ever caused a person to make a visit or check into a family in any way, shape, or form, or a person. That is recorded, and this will be on the report. And so it hasn't happened since I've been here, but in conversations with Brad, it has happened since he was here, where a report would come back and it would say, yes, so-and-so did have a check at this point in time. There was a question of child abuse. It was investigated and it was cleared, but it's still going to show up on that record. So just because something comes back on that record, that does not mean, means for sure that something happened or that they were charged or anything like that. It just means at some point in their history, they were reported and they were investigated, and they do provide you the information on what that investigation bore, and you can make the decision from there how much interaction they would have with your program. And then the other thing is down here in these sample letters, there's an example of a letter you would submit to the state office to run the Jewish Identity Sex Offender check. That's something as simple as just giving me their name. If it is a married person, I would need their maiden name and their married name, and then their date of birth. You're not required to include their middle name, but it has proven helpful for me in the past, especially if they have a very like John Smith kind of name. It sometimes saves me some time when I'm checking through, because there's been a couple of occasions where I've had a name come through and an age that matches, and I've spent like 30 minutes going through some really horrible records till I make sure that I'm sure the person on the page in front of me is not the person that I'm finding pop up across the country. So if they give you a middle initial or something, doesn't hurt to throw that on there, but otherwise it's a name and date of birth, and that helps me sort of narrow down what I'm looking at. More often than not, I don't get any names that come back, but some of those more common names, they do sometimes give me a lot of results. And then down here, these are more specific to employees. There is a slightly different way that we would do screenings for county paid versus NDSU paid. The main difference really is just who receives that SFN 433 back. If it is a county paid position, your office would receive that information back, and you would keep that on file with your office. You would be the office of record. If they are an NDSU paid staff, then Chris Holt, actually over in the extension director's office, that would be running that. And so she would keep that form there, and that would be her record. She also is the one that would reach out to you if it was time to rescreen in 6 years. So if you get an email from Chris and it says, hey, it's time for you to rescreen, do this, this, and this, it's because she's keeping track of that for you. So NDSU paid extension, Chris will run your SFN 433. County paid employees, your county office will run that for you. And so this is kind of a very similar screen, but this one is for the rescreen. So that first tab was screening county and NDSU, and the second one is rescreening county and NDSU paid employees. And so that is the end of the information that I have. I do have an outline of this area of the website in a Word document, complete with links to all of these pages to sort of make it quick and easy for you to click around. So that is the state side of this process. And then I'm going to turn it over to Carrie to kind of talk about what it looks like actually putting this into effect.
Does anybody have any questions for Mickey before we move to the county portion with Carrie?
I'm just going to say that unfortunately, when we talked about the youth protection, we had a youth protection meeting there, that old blue PowerPoint that Mickey highlighted needs to come down, and we're doing revisions to our website, but it contains incorrect chaperone information. It says it's okay for chaperones to stay with youth, and we have changed that. So please, please do not use that. I'm emailing Katie right now to make sure that comes down. So we apologize for that. It needs to be updated.
Thank you, Rochelle.
Rochelle, can I ask you one other question too, since you are working with that? Is that, the video that we, years ago, we were very faithful at showing, it's called a 4-H pledge, keeping youth safe. Is that still required, or has the PowerPoint presentations actually replaced that?
I'm not the one working with this. I think Leanne and Mickey are working on it, but we had a meeting to discuss it. And I think, Megan, you can help me too with this. I think the other PowerPoints that Sharon Query worked on that Mickey mentioned, those replace that.
Okay.
That's correct. Those are the new ones. Yes.
Yeah, so ignore that blue PowerPoint. We'll make sure it gets pulled off of there because it does, yeah, it links to that video, which we don't use anymore and stuff. And we've had things show up on our website all of a sudden that hadn't been there in years. So we were just kind of wondering how it happened. So there's a big revision coming. So just ignore that one.
Because that's one of the questions that I actually get asked is, you know, do you have a copy of that video? And I know we have one here in the office, but if we're not supposed to use it, then that's good for all of us to know. So.
Rochelle, can you remind me, are there plans to revamp that PowerPoint and have another option for something to share with your volunteers in the county if you want to do a sort of hands-on training with your volunteers, or are we just going to pull that down and not put anything
Well, I think Sharon had done those. Some of the information is contained in those other PowerPoints you referenced, so we can have a conversation about that. But because yes, we expect them to do this in the county or go through it. But I don't know, we'll have to look back at the meeting notes because I'm not, like Leanne's kind of in charge of this since she has to work with our university attorney on all of it and the policy.
Got it. Thank you.
Okay, those are some good questions. I appreciate everybody contributing and asking. So keep the questions coming. So if not, any more questions, we'll move on to Carrie to talk about what she does in the county with her fantastic process.
Hi, everybody. I'm Carrie Pressler with the Morton County Extension Office. You can hear me, right? Okay. Okay. Let me share my screen here. Okay. Youth protection policy. This is what I do here in the office. Seems to work out pretty good. When to send the youth protection policy letters and forms. When a new volunteer enrolls, you'll see that in your 4-H online, and so you'll automatically send out a packet, which I'll talk about. When you have a re-enrolled volunteer, as you scroll down in their profile, you'll see if they have to be rescreened or not. It'll come up in red, I believe, if they have to be rescreened before you approve it. If the 6 years is up, it'll show you that, 2021, it's time to be rescreened. When your 4-H youth is turning 18 or is 18, you want to send, and I have a separate letter for that, a teen screening. And it's just the letter, and I'll show you that. You need to run a report in 4-H online to see all those ages all at once. And then, of course, when someone enrolls to be a chaperone. The forms I use are the SFN 433. It's January 2021. If you send an older version, they'll send it back to you. So you either fax it or you can email it securely to the Department of Human Services, Child Abuse and Neglect. The Form A, which is the Adult Behavioral Expectations, Form B, the application to volunteer, and then I create a tracking form. If you're new to doing the YPP, you might want to use that check sheet that Mickey showed you, just so you get used to it. I have done it for so many years, I don't use it. I go back to reference it, but here's my tracking form I use that I made up just to help me. The date sent, that I sent it out, name, address, the date that they return it to you, and the date you send it for processing. And that would be to the Human Services and to Mickey. And then, of course, when it comes back, the SFN 433 or not 433, I write in on the form that you get back the date that they approved it, I write that in, and then the date that Mickey approves it for me. So if anybody ever comes up to you and says, what's the status of so-and-so, I go right to this and say, oh, I sent it to Human Services and Mickey for processing. I haven't heard anything, then I can follow up, or I check it regularly and I look to see, okay, it's been a week and a half, I need to follow up on this. And then I do send out the approval letter and I put that down just to know that I have finished with it. And then I don't have to search back in files saying, did I send everything I need to send? And then there's a column there for follow-up if I have any notes. This is that welcome letter to my new volunteers. It's a transmittal letter that Mickey showed you can get off the website. We tailored it to our county. As you can see, the first sentence, the Morton County Extension staff. I did update this to reflect what Mickey and Megan and I were talking about the other day about looking at the youth PowerPoints, but I haven't used that yet, but I did update it because I know it's coming. So this is just an automatic welcome letter. I have a bunch of these stapled into packets that Carla has already signed, and she knows that, and then I just use that. Letters for rescreening, I updated this to reflect it's from our office. When it should come back, I don't give them a real long time. I like to have, with the rescreening and the youth, I like to have that back pretty soon. They can usually do it pretty soon. And then with rescreening, like Mickey said, I use the SFN 433 in the Form A, and for the youth, I use the SFN 4033 and the Form A. Letter to potential chaperone, basically the same. I do give them a time when to come back. When we get chaperones, that's usually a very quick turnaround because it's usually for camp. So I will send it out and I will email, if I have an email, letting them know we need it back quickly. Of course, the Form A and Form B, I always send that out. You have to. And here's what I really want to talk about too, is the SFN 433. This up here is all fillable. So I fill that out before I do anything. And then right here under other, I check that and I'll put 4-H volunteer, or I'll put adult member for the youth screening, or I'll put 4-H chaperone. So then I know when it comes back and they know. When you get it back from your potential volunteer, make sure that this box up here in part 2 is checked and initialed. That's giving them, Human Services, the permission to run them through. If you'll notice under Social Security, I have that optional. I just learned that that is optional. They don't have to do that. I'm assuming they will. Under birth name, alias, or other married names, they need to fill that out, or they need to check the box. If you send it to Department of Human Services and this isn't done, or this isn't done, you're going to get it back with the form, and then you're going to have to send it back to your volunteers saying, please fill this out, and then they have to re-sign it and redate it. So I really try and make sure that those pieces are filled out. If they don't do it, I'll send it back to them right away with a self-addressed stamped envelope, so I get it back soon.
Carrie, maybe you can touch, if you go back one screen. Okay, so how important is it when you send your form in for SFN 433 for the date to be as current as possible? Because I know that we've had volunteers that have kept it maybe in their vehicle for a few weeks and haven't turned it in. And then I know that affects it, but how important is that?
That's very important. I'm glad you brought that up. I want to say it's 30 days. So if you sent it out in January and you're just getting it back, it's not going to fly. You have to return, send them a brand new one, explain to them. They're usually don't gripe about it, and they will return another one to you.
Mhm.
So that date is important. Thanks,
Carrie,
Carla.
Carrie, this is Lisa from Cass County. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
It does say on the form, kind of under where the signature is, that they're good for 60 days.
Oh, okay. Thanks. I forgot.
And in that small print, yeah, I've had that problem before too.
Yeah. And I've gotten them back when they've held them forever, and it's like, nope, sorry, I gotta return it. And that's why that tracking sheet that I finally made up is really helpful, because you can see, so-and-so hasn't sent it back to you yet. I need to contact them.
I see Robin said that she had them returned after 30 days. So I guess the sooner the better, when you get those forms, to not hang on to them, or really encourage your volunteers to get them to you as soon as possible, just so you don't have problems with, sending them on to the Department of Human Services.
Yeah. Thank you.
Hi, this is Tori Jones in Lemoore, and I had another question. I have 2 agents, a 4-H agent and an egg agent. And for the contact person at the top, is there one who is more correct to include, or whose name should I use for that?
Well, I'm kind of lucky. I have Carla's our 4-H youth agent, and she's the county coordinator. So I think that'd be up to your agents. Don't you think so, Carla?
Yep, I would agree. So I guess if you do have someone who's responsible for your 4-H program with a 4-H agent, I would definitely put them on there as the contact. But that's me. And I guess, like I said, our situation is unique, that I'm a full-time 4-H person in the county and the county coordinator. So, but I would lean toward your 4-H, whoever's responsible for your 4-H program.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks. Just some helpful hints here. When I showed you my welcome letter, I told you that I have Carla sign one, and then I make several copies. I staple it with Form A and Form B and the SFN 433, and that is for 4-H volunteer. So when I get a new volunteer, I just pull that out and I send it automatically, of course, put it in the tracking form. When I do rescreenings and youth screenings and chaperones, I just keep 3 different other files that have the same forms, but in the SFN 433, it'll say chaperone, or it'll say adult member. So then anybody, Carla can come, if somebody comes in, Carla can come and find it right away and give it to them. But if I'm sending them out, I do my transmittal letters. I tailor it to who it's going to go to. After the screenings are approved, I enter it into 4-H Online, and we use the date that the Department of Human Services puts on, that they have approved it. We've never had anybody come back unapproved, just the ones that have to, check the box or something. I take care of that. But we've never had anybody come back unapproved, so we've been lucky. Then send out your acceptance letter, and I'll show you that. Enter your dates in the tracking form, and then gather all relevant documentation and file. Here's the acceptance letter I use. just a thank you for your forms. They've been submitted, evaluated, and approved. And I have Carla sign it. I have Carla sign everything. So she's aware of what's going on and she knows what I'm doing. Here's my tracking form again. So ideally, when you have social security numbers in there in your SFN 433, you should have it locked. I have it locked, both my in process files and where I store them at. And then you keep for 6 years and then I shred them. So that's it in a nutshell. I'm done.
This is Lisa from Cass County again.
Yeah,
I have a
Lisa.
question, Carrie. You mentioned when you send it that SFN 433 to the state or to the Department of Human Services.
Yeah.
I usually fax because as a county entity, all of our emails are public. They can be requested.
Mhm.
And if they have social securities numbers on them and such, if somebody ever came into our office and wanted to see my emails, they have the right to do that. And when I started here, I had spoke with somebody up at the Department of Human Services, and they said that they would rather not have them by email because they would be flooded with emails on running those
Mm,
papers. I don't know.
I
Do you
fax
send
them,
to-
Lisa. I fax
Well-
them too.
Yeah, I fax them, but they email it back with a secure envelope.
Correct.
I'm just wondering,
Correct.
is anybody else email them to the Department of Human Services?
Well, my understanding, Lisa, is if you're going to email them, you have to email them securely. But I don't know how to do that.
Yeah, I don't know either. And they had told me they didn't want it that way because it would be too much work for them to unsecure all of those emails and they'd be flooded, and that they'd rather have them
Oh.
mailed in or faxed.
Yeah. I do fax them in and then get them back by email.
Yep,
Thanks.
so do I.
Yeah, you're right.
Yep. Okay. I was just curious if anybody else emails them or if they've had problems with that.
I see a question on here from Summer. She said, if they're screened in 2021, would their rescreening be in 2027? Is that how you calculate it, Carrie?
I do, okay, 21, 27. Yeah, that's how I do it. And it'll automatically come up in 4-H online for you, so you don't have to recalculate anything.
And then I see
You'll have
Sherelle,
to figure it out when you put it in, but you'll, it's not hard.
I see Sherelle said that she puts her name as administrative assistant on the paperwork, the YPP paperwork, since she keeps those files. So, and let's see, DHS is required to fax. We talked about that. And then I had another question. Can you send the SFN 433 that you had? I just pulled up the 2021 from the state site and does not state that the social security number is optional. Carrie?
I was told they were optional.
I answered right below that. If you follow the asterisk on the 2021 form to the wording below those boxes, it does state that it is voluntary to offer social. I just pulled it up on the active site.
Thanks,
that-
Nikki.
Does that help your question, Roberta? Okay, great.
Okay.
And then Heather said that she emailed and they didn't say anything. So who knows, like, well, I guess better just a fax or what you said. Okay. That's all the questions I'm seeing in the chat box. So Carla?
Yep. Sorry. It just, Carrie and I have a great working relationship with the youth protection. And if there is questions or someone's not getting back to it, I guess really, lean on each other as far as your administrative assistant and you to contact those folks and say, hey, I need these forms back before, you can really get involved with working with the kids. That's something that we are committed to keeping our kids safe. And so we need to have that information back before those folks are having interactions and working with our kids. So make sure that you keep that communication open with your administrative assistant, or if you are an administrative assistant, partnering with an agent so that you can get those forms back, because we don't want to hold up the process for anybody. We want that to be a smooth transition for our volunteers and for our kids. And so, really partnering with them. I did send a quick message to Sue Kwame. I think you're on here. But just to touch base a little bit about 4-H ambassadors. I know in the past, so she responded back. We have 4-H ambassadors, and we've had questions in the past of whether or not we should be screening them once they've left the 4-H program. As long as they're enrolling in 4-H within your county, and to be a 4-H ambassador, you still have to be enrolled either as a 4-H member or as a 4-H volunteer. So making sure that even your 4-H ambassadors that are ambassadors at a state level are getting screened. That's really important. We have Extension Youth Conference, and a lot of those kids who are ambassadors are 18 and older, and we need to make sure that we're getting that done as well. And that's our responsibility in the counties to make sure that our ambassadors are enrolled in the 4-H program, either as a volunteer or as a 4-H member, and that we're getting them screened through YPP. And I guess that's all I have, unless other people have questions, but it's just really important to have that relationship that you guys are working together in your offices to get that paperwork done. Because again, it's protecting our youth and ourselves, as an entity with 4-H. So.
Hey, Carrie, I saw one more comment from Lisa on the SFN 433, the upper part where the initials are needed. It says you have to handwrite those. They won't accept typed initials. So I don't know if anybody's ever tried to type those.
Where is this? What?
Lisa, do you want to talk about the initial comment? Lisa had just typed in the chat box at the upper part of the form where the initials are needed. They must be handwritten. They will not accept typed initials from being a fillable PDF. Okay.
Yeah, no, I don't.
So yeah, that box where you have to have it check marked.
Yeah,
and
section
initialed.
2. Yeah.
And where you initial, it has to be handwritten initials. I've had it where I made it like a fillable PDF, and my volunteer filled it all out, then just printed off, signed it, whatever. And I've had it rejected where their initials were typed. They want them handwritten.
Didn't know that. I've never had them typed, but I didn't know that. That's good to know.
I guess whenever I'm talking to people about that form, the Department of Human Services is very, very, very picky.
Mm-hmm.
And if they I don't know, Carrie, did you cover what happens when they reject something?
I've never had anything rejected, Lisa.
So if I've had the mistake where I've looked it over and I've missed that they forgot to check the little box that says they have no middle name.
Oh, yes, Lisa. I send that back to the person that needs to be, or the volunteer, and I tell them what they need to do, and they have to re-sign it, and they have to redate it.
Yeah, they have to re-sign and redate the same form.
Right.
So it would have 2 different dates and 2 signatures on it.
Right. That's right.
Let's see, a good point from Melanie. Make sure they sign their name legibly, because if they don't, this has come back and they had to re-sign and date again. So I guess the lessons learned here is just make sure it's all filled out correctly and they read everything up front before you send it in.
Yeah, I have had people where when they've printed their name and it's been questionable, I have wrote above where they wrote their name, what it is supposed to be, like in parentheses, and they have accepted that. That I have wrote it clearly above what it's supposed to be.
Okay, what other questions does everybody have? These are good questions to talk about and refresh this process with everybody. So please ask. Oh, Robin says, I did not know the ambassadors need to be enrolled. They must not know that either because they have two that are not. So anybody want to address that?
Ambassadors are no different than the volunteers that we have. So yeah, they have to be enrolled in the 4-H program and be youth protection certified, again, because they are acting on behalf of a 4-H representative, whether that's at a county level or at a state level. And so all 4-H state ambassadors need to be screened that are 18 and older, and they also have to be within your system. Sue Kwame did make a comment too that, you know, they're told that. So, you know, we've had the instance here in the county, and I know Carrie can say this too, where we've had a young lady who hasn't enrolled, and we've had to talk to her numerous times about getting enrolled within the 4-H online system. So it's just, again, another push, unfortunately, but we need to make sure that it's done.
So Carla, we're going to make sure that we use 4-H online for even our retreats and things going forward, and that will really help catch some of that stuff too. So that will help everybody in the counties hopefully catch those ambassadors.
Great, thanks, Sue.
And just another commercial for, we're looking for other members to be on the policy manual committee and the club materials committee. So we're looking to revamp those two areas. And so if you're interested in helping out, we need lots of good expertise across the state. So please let Leanne know about that. Or if you want to tell me, that's fine too. I can pass your name on, but we definitely need more people involved and more ideas out there. So please think about that. Okay, do we have any more questions this morning? Okay, well, I really appreciate Carrie and Carla and Mickey for putting this together as a good refresher for everybody to learn about what you have to be sure to do to make sure our volunteers are enrolled and certified and then recertified so we can keep our youth safe. That's our main goal here, to make sure our youth are safe throughout the state, and we follow this process. And so if you think of anything else, you can send me a message or send them a message as well. And we will send out this recording with all the attachments that Mickey and Carla and Carrie have talked about. And they're also in the chat box, but if you didn't catch those, we'll send out an email with all that information as well. So I hope this has helped. And again, if you have questions, you can definitely ask these fantastic ladies as well. So thank y'all for joining us this morning.
Hey, Megan.